Britain in the 1950s was rebuilding from the ashes of war. Queues still lined the streets, ration books filled pockets, and coal dust clung to the air like a second skin. Life wasn't about luxury. It was about making do, about pride in the smallest victories. Before televisions glowed in every home, radios ruled the living room. Children played in the streets, pockets jingled with pennies, and families huddled around coal fires that fought the bitter cold. It was an era of resilience, routine, and quiet joys that shaped a generation. Every British home in the 1950s had a hearth, and the coal fire was its beating heart. Lighting it each morning wasn't just a chore. It was a ritual that defined the start of the day. Ashes from the night before were cleared, newspapers laid down, and kindling stacked with practiced care before the coal was finally added. The warmth it offered was never even. Near the fire, your skin tingled with heat. But just a few steps away, the air turned icy. Bedrooms upstairs often stayed freezing, forcing families to sleep under heavy blankets, breath visible in the morning air. Hot water bottles were treasured and baths were taken quickly to save every ounce of heat. For children, the fire's glow meant security and family life. They sat close to toast bread on long forks while parents read the newspaper in that golden warmth. The crackle of coal against the silence of a damp afternoon is a sound no thermostat can ever replace. Today, we turn dials for instant comfort, but something was lost in that convenience. The glow of orange embers wasn't just heat, it was home. Post-war Britain was gray, rationed, and scarred. But inside, families created color. Wallpaper became more than decoration. It was a declaration of optimism. Swirls of florals, bold stripes, and soft pastels covered walls that had once seemed cold and bare. Choosing patterns was a family event. Parents measured carefully while children helped paste and smooth laughter echoing through half-finished rooms. Mistakes were forgiven. A crooked line became a private joke rather than a disaster. The act of decorating mattered as much as the final look. These walls weren't silent. They held life. Behind those florals hung birthday balloons, school photos, and wet coats dripping after sudden rains. Wallpaper became the backdrop for years of laughter, arguments, and quiet moments, aging gracefully alongside the families it surrounded. Even when faded or torn, those patterns spoke of hope. Peeling corners in abandoned houses still whisper stories of resilience, love, and the determination to make a house a home. Money in the 1950s wasn't plastic. It was metal, solid and reassuring. Pennies, sixpences, and half-crowns clinked heavily in pockets, every coin carrying both weight and history. No card swipes, no screens, just real currency passed hand to hand. Children learned math not from apps, but from counting change under the watchful eye of a shopkeeper. A few pennies bought a paper bag of sweets, while a shilling might cover a cinema ticket and leave change for crisps. Each purchase was tangible, deliberate, a lesson in patience and value. Shops rang with the sound of tills, purse clasps snapping shut, coins rolling across wooden counters worn smooth by years of trade. Those jingles were more than money. They were the soundtrack of everyday life. The simulation simplified the system, but it stripped away some magic. Even now, holding an old coin feels like holding time itself, a fragment of a slower, more grounded world. Before television dominated the living room, the radio reigned supreme. It was big, boxy, and magical, carrying voices across miles to homes hungry for connection. Families gathered around it, the glow of the dial soft in the dim room, waiting for familiar voices to transport them beyond their own four walls. Schedules mattered. The evening news, comedy half-hours, and serialized dramas were unmissable. Programs like The Archers or Dick Barton became national rituals, threading a shared narrative through millions of households. These weren't passive moments. They were communal experiences. Mothers ironed as voices hummed in the background. Fathers mended household items, and children sat cross-legged on the floor, wide-eyed as Cliffers unfolded. Radio required imagination. Every scene was painted in the mind, not on a screen. Though television would soon take over, the intimacy of radio never truly faded. It spoke to us in a way screens never could, inviting us to listen, to picture, and to believe. Every neighborhood had a shop that smelled of tobacco, sweets, and freshly cut ham. Corner shops weren't just businesses. They were the pulse of the community. Wooden counters, jars of sherbet lemons, and shelves stacked with tins created a world both practical and comforting. Shopping wasn't rushed. A visit often meant 15 minutes of conversation before a single coin changed hands. Mrs. Jenkins behind the counter knew your family history, your cousin's wedding date, and your uncle's bad knee. Prices were penciled in, goods wrapped in brown paper, and trust measured in nods rather than receipts. Children approached the counter with trembling excitement, handing over coins for humbugs or sherbet sweets. Adults lingered to exchange gossip about rising tea prices or the latest neighborhood drama. These exchanges stitched communities together in a way no supermarket could replicate. Today, most of these shops are gone, but their memory lingers. They were more than places to buy. They were places to belong. School life in the 1950s was built on rules and respect. Uniforms were not optional. They were identity. Blazers, ties, polished shoes, and socks pulled high marked a child as disciplined and proud of belonging to something larger than themselves. Classrooms echoed with the scrape of chalk on blackboards and the rustle of exercise books. Lessons were formal and mistakes were corrected with firm voices or sometimes a sharp sting from a cane. Punishments were public. Praise was rare and respect wasn't requested. It was demanded. Neat handwriting was a badge of honor, and punctuality was sacred. Latin conjugations mattered, as did polished manners during assemblies where hymns filled echoing halls. Education was serious business, shaping character as much as knowledge. Looking back, some recall these routines as harsh, others as fair, but no one forgets them. School in the 50s left marks deeper than ink, engraving discipline and resilience into generations. The war had ended, but its shadow lingered in Britain's kitchens. Ration books may have disappeared by the mid-50s, yet the habits they created endured. Housewives became masters of invention, stretching every ounce of flour and every scrap of fat into meals that could feed a hungry family. Recipes traveled between neighbors like whispered secrets. A little sugar for jam making, an extra coupon traded for tea. These exchanges built quiet solidarity, a shared understanding that waste was unthinkable and thrift was a virtue. Shopping was an exercise in patience, with long queues outside butchers and greengrocers. Shelves no longer stood empty, but choice remained a luxury. People learned to appreciate what they had because they remembered vividly the years when they had so little. Today's convenience hides a lost art. Frugality wasn't just survival. It was a source of pride, proof that resilience and creativity could make life not just bearable, but beautiful. Before screens glued eyes indoors, streets belonged to children. Hopscotch squares were chalked on pavements, marbles clicked against the ground, and skipping ropes slapped the tarmac in rhythmic beats. Games were passed down like heirlooms. British Bulldog conkers and kick-the-cant resilience, and strategy long before video games offered pixels instead of scraped knees. Summer evenings stretched endlessly, filled with shouts and laughter, until the first flicker of street lights signaled it was time to head home. Friendships were forged in those games, intense, fleeting yet unforgettable. A rope, a ball, and imagination could turn an ordinary street into a kingdom of adventure. Competition taught humility, and sharing taught kindness, lessons that lasted a lifetime. Modern childhood feels quieter, but echoes of those simple pleasures linger. Would you trade hours online for just one more game under the open sky? For many families, summer meant escape, packed trains rattling toward the coast, suitcases tied with string. Blackpool, Brighton, Scarborough. These names promised salt air and days of freedom away from gray city streets. Guest houses offered lumpy beds and shared bathrooms, but no one cared. The real magic was outside. Donkey rides, neon-lit piers, and fish and chips eaten from greasy paper while seagulls circled above. Weather was irrelevant. Rain meant raincoats and determination, not disappointment. Children dashed into icy waves while parents huddled behind windbreaks, smiling despite the chill. Evenings brought penny arcades, live pier shows, and sleepy train rides home, with sand still clinging to shoes. Seaside trips weren't glamorous, but they stitched themselves into family memory. Even today, the scent of vinegar on ships or the cry of gulls can pull you back. No luxury was needed, just laughter, time, and the endless blue of the sea. Sunday wasn't just a day, it was a code. Clothes were pressed, shoes polished, hats and gloves chosen with care. Children understood that this was the day to show their best selves. Whether at church or on a walk through the park, politeness wasn't optional. It was an expectation. Please and thank you were drilled alongside prayers, and speaking out of turn was unthinkable. Meals were formal affairs, elbows off tables, voices kept low, and respect for elders came as naturally as breathing. These manners weren't stiffness. They were structure, offering dignity and grace in a world still healing from war. Neighbors greeted each other with nods and smiles, never casual familiarity without permission. Social interactions followed an unwritten script of courtesy that shaped character as much as custom. Today, such formality might seem old-fashioned, but beneath it lay values of respect and kindness that feel timeless. Wouldn't it be something to bring that back? Life in 1950s Britain was simple, disciplined, and full of quiet beauty. It was an era built on resilience where warmth came from cold fires, entertainment from radio, and joy from the streets outside your door. These weren't luxuries. They were lifelines shaping a generation that understood value in ways we've almost forgotten. We've revisited the wallpapers that held dreams, the coins that clinked in every pocket, and the seaside trips that felt like magic on a shoestring. These small, ordinary things weren't just habits. They were the fabric of life, weaving communities together in a way that feels almost impossible today. If this journey stirred a memory or made you wish you'd lived through those times, don't let it end here. Subscribe for more stories that bring the past alive, and share this video with someone who believes nostalgia isn't just looking back,